How's everybody doing? It's Bunny Flocks here again. I'm just doing a real quick Endgame review. If you don't know, I'm a huge Marvel head. I have tons and tons of comic books. I grew up on this stuff. I figured I'd just do a review, give you my take, the questions that I have, maybe rant a little bit about certain things. If you're here for the Web Applications Handbook contest, I'm going to do that at the end, and I'll put the time code in the description, so you can just go straight to that if that's all you're interested in. But if you're here for the review, warning, there's going to be spoilers. I'm just talking about the movie in general. There will be spoilers. If you don't want spoilers or you haven't seen it yet, just don't click this video. Click away, turn it off, or bookmark it or whatever. Watch it later after you watch Endgame. Again, warning, this is spoilers. I will be talking about things that happen directly inside the movie Endgame. So you've been warned. Again, this is spoiler. So again, this is a warning. Just turn this off if you're not interested in spoilers. Okay, so my personal review of Endgame. It's definitely a dope movie. Super dope. I saw it twice already. I saw it Friday, and I just saw it a couple hours ago. Second time. I have a lot of questions, raised so many questions, and I have a feeling they're going to be answered at some point in the next few movies or eventually. First things first. Well, let me start here. Captain Marvel finds Tony and Nebula in the ship floating in outer space. We don't get any much background on that. If you watched the Captain Marvel, the end credit scene, they showed they did the Nick Fury's beeper thing and they called her in and she came down and they had their initial conversation. None of that happened in this movie. I guess they just assumed. They didn't put it in the movie for, I'm assuming, time's sake. It was 3 hours long. But we go straight in and all of a sudden, Captain Marvel finds Tony. We don't get any background information on how. I guess we can assume they started talking. Captain Marvel and the Avengers talked about Tony. Maybe Rocket was there and he said, hey, I got my friends, Guardians of the Galaxy, blah, blah, blah. No kind of background information. We have no idea how she found him. I guess we can assume at this point Rocket had a beacon on the ship and Captain Marvel was sent to go find the ship, maybe to find Rocket's people, and then in doing so she found Tony. That's the assumption. That's my assumption. It's kind of a lot of questions. Hopefully there'll be some type of backstory or something, maybe in one of her movies or in a future movie where they can explain a little bit how she just happened to be cruising. How she happened to just be cruising in space and then find Tony and bring both of them back, Nebula and Tony Stark. Next thing I didn't particularly enjoy or like, or I felt was, in Deadpool's words, lazy writing, was the whole rat situation with Ant-Man's quantum thing. Like, I really was feeling like, you watch the trailers and you watch Ant-Man and you watch the post-end scene of the Ant-Man movie and you feel like there's a huge problem there. Ant-Man goes into the quantum field, his people get snapped, they disappear, and it's like, okay, what's going to happen with Ant-Man? He's disappeared, well, he's in the quantum zone, there's no way for him to get back out, and then it's like, what's going to happen? Watch Endgame, and then a fucking rat, excuse my language, a rat happens to just crawl across the dashboard, the keys, the controls, turn it back on, and then here comes Ant-Man. I thought that was very lazy. I particularly didn't like that. I felt like it should have been something more complex. Maybe Ant-Man climbs out of the quantum field himself. Maybe someone helps him. Maybe Ghost, helps him, or somebody in the quantum field finds him and helps him. I don't know. I felt like there was more could have been done with that, but I also understand, as far as the time's sake concern, the movie was already 3 hours long. So instead of getting some complex solution to Ant-Man getting out of the quantum field, we get a rat crawling across the controls and bring him back. I thought that was corny. I thought that was lazy writing. Definitely glad he came back, obviously. And then that's also another thing. If it wasn't for Ant-Man coming back, the entire avenge thing would have never happened. Like, everything solely rested upon Ant-Man's return and Ant-Man's idea to go back in time and fix everything. So I don't know why nobody else, between Tony, between Bruce, between anyone else, didn't think about time travel. I don't know if I felt like Ant-Man had to come back to put the idea in their head about time travel. Again, this is spoilers. When Ant-Man and Black Widow and Captain America go talk to Tony to pitch the idea, Tony's like, no, he don't want to do it. But then they leave, and then he solves the problem by himself. No collaboration with him and Ant-Man about the quantum field or about the quantum machine or about Pym particles or any of that. Just Tony solves the problem all on his fucking own in his house, in his living room. And then it's like, and then for me, I'm a critical thinker. I'm like, well, why, when you're thinking about solutions, okay, you chop Thanos' head off, he destroyed the stones, 5 years pass, nothing's been done. I don't know if other solutions have been proposed. Nobody thought about time travel until Ant-Man comes back and then puts the bug in Tony's ear. And then within a matter of hours, it seemed like maybe a day, I don't know, Tony solves a time travel problem. And then just, again, I know it's science fiction, I know it's a movie, but I just feel like 5 years. It took 5 years for Ant-Man to come back and for Tony to just solve a time travel problem. I don't know. I'm probably being too critical. It is a comic book movie. I did enjoy it, but again, there's that whole Tony solved it by himself without no collaboration from anyone else. I feel like that should have been a bigger problem to be solved, maybe by maybe Bruce and Tony and Ant-Man. Maybe his knowledge of Pym particles or quantum mechanics could have been involved. I don't know. That's my take on that. All right, and so here we're going to talk about probably my biggest gripe about, not a gripe, my biggest rant, concern, issue about the movie was, again, going back to time travel. Right away, right off the bat, once Tony solves the time travel problem, he goes back to the Avengers headquarters and talks to everybody else and say, hey, let's get the team back together. They avenge everybody, reassemble everybody, get them all back together. And now the real quick idea is to go back in time, get the stones in different periods of time, bring them back to the present, which is 5 years our future, bring them back to the present, and then bring everybody back again. And then because of, Bruce's conversation with Supreme Being, go back in time again and drop them off where they picked them up, where they got them, so that everything could be okay. Now, first thing that happens in this whole time travel thing is they destroy all our previous inhibitions, thoughts, concept of time travel in all the movies and all the time travel movies that we've seen growing up. Back to the Future, whatever, name it. You name it is in there. So apparently, this movie jumps to the conclusion that time is not linear. It is not one timeline. So, for instance, you can't go back into the past and change something to have your present reality change. So they immediately identify that as a key concept to throw away the whole go back in time and change everything. So the solution is not to go back and change what happened. The solution is to go back, grab these stones, bring them back to their present so they could change what was done. It's a little hard to follow for the simple fact that's not what we've all been trained, in movies and cartoons and TV and science fiction. So it's a new concept out the gate. It's a new time travel concept. So try to wrap your head around that, which is fine. But then there's also jumping back into different pasts, grabbing the stones, bringing them back to the present, to their future, 5 years, our future, whatever, and then leaving the question it's like you don't understand. Okay, you went back to 2012, Battle of New York, took the stones out of that timeline. What happens in that reality? Their solution is jump all the way to the end when Cap goes back. He goes back and puts the stones back where they picked it up at, just so that could continue. And then it's like, well, you put the stones back, supposedly, in the timelines that you retrieve them from, doesn't that eventually mean, as those timelines progress, that Thanos is going to eventually get him again and do the same thing? It's like, you did that to... I'm telling you, it gets confusing. You did that to put the stones back and allow Thanos to get him again, do the decimation, do the snap, and then in your future, you undid it. I don't know. I feel like I need like a timeline, some type of graph or something to explain this better to me, to understand how this works. Not to mention Cap going back and returning the stones by himself, which I feel like it is a whole nother movie or another, some type of, should be a prequel or should be a comic book or a book or something to explain that, because as a team they did it individually, but how can one man, Cap in this case, go back and return all the stones? How can he go to Asgard and return the ether back into, Jane Foster? How can he go to how can he go back to every scenario and return the stone? How can he go back to 1970, drop the stone back inside that vault that Tony took it from? And in doing so, wouldn't he run into Tony and be like, hey, we did what we had to do, instead of taking his, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of questions, a whole bunch of timeline issues. My brain can't wrap around it. And then not to mention the Soul Stone. Okay, Cap, you're going to go back to Vormir to return the Soul Stone to the Red Skull. And when you meet him, is there a battle? Do you have a conversation? Is there some, because there's huge history between Cap and Red Skull. What happens there? Is that another movie? Is that going to be a book? Is that going to be a comic book? We need to understand. I feel like I need to understand, how did Cap go back and return all these stones with no issues, without a hitch? Then, I guess he went back to 1940 somehow. If you think about it, so they went to he had to return the stones back to where, they were taken from. He had to go back to 1970 to 2012 to 2014, I believe. I believe those are the 3 years. So the earliest, he must have did it backwards order, I'm assuming. 2014, 2012, 1970 to, get back with Peggy Carter and, have a life with her. My thing is, okay, judging by the age that he was when he was sitting on the bench, it doesn't seem like he would be that much older if he only went back to 1970 to be with Peggy. I felt like he would probably have to go back to the 40s. That makes more sense for the age. So how did he make his way back to 1940? Did he use a time stone after he returned everything? Maybe he went back to the Supreme Being and then was asked to go back in time. I don't know. There's so many questions. I know I'm probably overthinking a lot of this, but I'm hoping that these things get answered, because when you mess with time and you mess with all these realities, there's so many questions, so many things go wrong. I feel like what Marvel did with Endgame, although it was a great movie, it answered a lot of questions, pertaining to Infinity War and other movies. They raised so much more. And then I have a legit fear that moving forward with the MCU, there can be issues, that Fox, or like that happened with X-Men's continuity, with the X-Men movies, how they just jacked up the timeline. So many questions weren't answered. It seems like Fox Studios just ignored a lot of things that went wrong in the writing and the issues between different movies. I hopefully Marvel doesn't fall into that rabbit hole where the timelines are all jacked up and things don't start making sense. I hope that doesn't happen. The other question is, the 5-year gap for everybody that came back. Okay, so half the planet disappeared. They come back 5 years later. They get thrown back into Earth and the universe, all the other people. Now it's like, okay, there's a 5-year age gap. Obviously, Cassie Lang is 5 years older, but now Peter Parker's dropped back. So I don't know. I feel like there's got to be some major plan or plot for this 5-year gap that Marvel had in mind, to extend the lives or to extend the story in some kind of way. I don't know. Hopefully, in the future movies or the next Spider-Man movie in July or June, we'll get to see what that's about. The other thing that kind of messed me up. So many things. So Gamora comes back, but she's back because she came through the time portal with Thanos. Apparently, Thanos brought everybody back from that time because the Black Order was back. he had his army, he would have had to bring them through, especially the Black Order, because they died. So it's like, okay, Gamora's back. So he never did the decimation, or he never had to sacrifice her. Again, I'm thinking one timeline, so that's probably my mistake. So apparently he never had to sacrifice her to get the Soul Stone. So Gamora's back in our present timeline. She doesn't know, Star-Lord. She doesn't know Peter Quill, which is fine for, that'll be fun for Guardians of the Galaxy 3 to see how that works out. But when you go back to when Black Widow killed herself to get the Soul Stone, and then they get back to the headquarters, and then Hawkeye's like, there's no way she can't come back. The red guy said she can't come back, and Hulk tried to snap and bring her back, and it didn't work. But we have Gamora. Gamora from the past is back as a character. She's alive. It's the past Gamora. So you mean to tell me Black Widow can't come back either? After they defeated Thanos, they had the Time Stone. They had access to the Time Stone. They could have brought Nat back. I don't know. It happened. Gamora's alive. The Soul Stone was sacrificed the first time to get, she was sacrificed the first time to get the Soul Stone in Infinity War, and now she's back. So there's loopholes there. There's things that can be done. I feel like Black Widow can definitely come back. Again, this is a comic book universe. Everybody comes back, as we saw. Then we get to Tony Stark getting the we get to Tony Stark getting the stones and doing the snap, decimating Thanos and his army, and then he dies. Okay, we still had access to the stones. Doctor Strange was there. I felt like he maybe could have took the Time Stone, reversed Tony's injuries, in his body, just his body part, brought him back. So I feel like, I know it's a movie. I know his contract was up. Robert Downey Jr.'s contract was up. I know, they gotta find a way to write him off. But again, for me, when you're watching these movies, there's so many possibilities, so many things that can be done. Tony didn't have to die. I feel like Black Widow didn't have to die. They could have brought Vision back. I feel like, well, they have the stone, so either way, it's a great movie. I feel like there's so many questions with all this time stuff. Loki disappearing with the Space Stone when they went back in time. It's like, guys, what's happening here? Well, are these going to be a bunch of split realities? Is Disney, Marvel planning to start numbering these realities? Like how DC does with DC 52, DC whatever. That could be interesting, but it could be hard to follow. So would this universe, what happened in Endgame, be Marvel Universe 1, and then they'll just start doing timelines? I know there's plans to do the What If series. The What If comic book series was a very popular comic book. I have a few What Ifs, and it was good to read for to understand alternate realities or whatever. So maybe this is Marvel's way of introducing the What If series, where there's so many different possibilities, so many realities, so many different timelines, and maybe them going back, getting stones, and then going back and putting them back is what breaches out into these what if realities. I feel like that's a possibility that could possibly answer a lot of questions. Overall, the movie was definitely good. It definitely closed out Infinity War. I felt like we all kind of knew that Black Panther and Spider-Man and everyone that was decimated was going to come back. And they have, which I feel like we all kind of knew. They weren't gonna get rid of Doctor Strange and Spider-Man and Black Panther, especially we have a new Spider-Man movie coming out in a month and a half. So we all knew that. But I guess the question was how. And so, we saw, which is dope. Another thing that happened was Cap wielding the hammer. That was super dope. I kind of didn't expect that coming. It was definitely a shock. When that happened, the whole theater blew up. It was very short-lived, though, because Thanos had to hit him one time, and then it was a wrap. I guess Cap couldn't get back in his mode or his mojo. But him wielding the hammer was definitely a plus. Definitely surprising. But then again, he retires. He goes back in time and lives his life with Peggy. So it's like, that was short-lived. It's like, are we going to get Cap in the future wielding the hammer some more? Because now he's an old man. So it's like, okay, he had it for 20 minutes and that's it. You know, does Thor get the hammer back? So now Thor has his hammer and Stormbreaker. You know, he's with the Guardians now. He's going on journeys with them. So there's a lot of questions, but I'm sure they're going to be answered in the time being. I think that's all I have. Those are my questions. Those are my things that bothered me about the movie. I'm probably going to see it again a couple more times. Probably more theories are going to pop into my head, you know, as I watch it. But it was super dope. I did not cry. A lot of sniffling around in the theater. I didn't cry. I was a G, straight G. Definitely tear-jerking moments, but it was a dope movie, obviously. 10 years, or maybe 11 years since Iron Man came out in 2008. Marvelously done. Sad Stan Lee didn't live long enough to watch it. I'm sure he was very involved in Endgame. Before he passed, he might even have known, you know, the plot and the script. But I felt like it's very sad that he didn't get to see the success of it and what's happening now. You know, I just read something. It surpassed $1 billion its first weekend, which is freaking huge. You know, world record. And it's only going to get better. So, thank you, Marvel. Thank you, Stan Lee. And looking forward to these questions being answered in future movies. So that's all I have for my review. Let me jump to the Web Applications Handbook giveaway. If you would follow me to the comment picker here. I already have the URL loaded up. I'm going to click start. It's going to go through the comments. I have 35 unique commenters, and the one person that shows up here, I will contact you for your book. So here we go. Drum roll. Start. All right. So first person chosen here did not do the hashtag, so I'm assuming you didn't want the book. So I'm going to run this again. We're going to pick another winner. Thank you, Ankar Willis, for your comment. Thank you, Tomo M, for your comment. You also didn't put the hashtag, so I'm assuming you didn't want the book. So we're going to go here. Third time's the charm. Hopefully this picks someone that did the hashtag that wanted the book. Here we go. Brendan Patrick. I guess you put two comments, and then the second one you put the hashtag. And luckily it picked the comment where you had the hashtag. So Brendan Patrick, you win the Web Application Hacker Handbook 2. I'm going to go ahead and contact you. Send me your email, send me your physical address, and I'll send that book to you. Congratulations. You forgot to put the hashtag, but at least you fixed it. So congratulations to that. All right, guys. That's all for my Endgame review. I'm going to go ahead and continue my studies, continue my OSCP. I did schedule it for May 31st, so I have another 30 days. As always, I will keep you posted, and I will share my experience, and I'll let you know how that goes. That's all I have. Bunny Flocks, and I'm out. Thanks.